Spartan child who is caught stealing will be punished, and yet a Spartan child who does not steal will be regarded as a complete wimp. If you are very good at cheating and you don't get caught, then you in fact will flourish.
The length one boy went to so as not to get caught was recorded by Plutarch. According to his account, a very hungry young boy stole a fox cub to eat. When a superior suspected he had stolen the fox, the boy hid the vicious little animal under his cloak. Rather than be found out, the boy let the trapped animal bite away at his flesh until he died.
This was taken throughout antiquity as an example of Spartan toughness. You know, that boy had been taught to be so unflinching, to deal with pain, to be respectful to his superiors. On the other hand, he was being eaten alive from the inside.
Toughening and strengthening Spartan adolescents was deemed necessary because of the kinds of battles they would one day fight.
The phalanx is as strong as the weakest link. So the crucial element is to make sure that everyone is more or less equally strong, and that those who are weaker are simply eliminated.
It was said of the Spartans that they were the only nation that when they went to war, things actually got easier for them.
Life in the agoge was a weeding out process. Boys were continually required to pass tests of strength, flexibility, endurance, and cunning. Failure was severely punished. At the annual festival at the temple of Artemis Orthia, Spartans would gather to watch a test that might be called the grab for the cheese.
The young men of Sparta divide into two groups. One group tries to steal the cheese that is piled up on the altar, and another group, armed with whips, try to prevent them from doing so. In that kind of melee, there are going to be occasions when people die.
Much of what young Spartan males were put through seems like a forecast of the most ominous aspects of modern fraternity hazings. And indeed, there were many Spartan boys who, when the tests were over, had not passed and had died.
It's a constant competition whereby everybody is being judged, graded in effect, and then there are winners who are given various advantages, various honors. So here's your Spartan. He is trained both to be like everybody else and to subordinate everything to the commonality and to be superior to everybody else.
To help guide them through their training, each Spartan boy was required to take a mentor, an older man whose association with the boy continued for life.
It was the responsibility of the mentor to watch out for a young boy that was in his care, to see that the training was proper, and to see that manners and character were also receiving appropriate attention.
Modern scholars debate as to whether or not the depth of their friendship included a sexual relationship.
In many situations in which women are excluded from participation, whether it's the military or whether it is something else, then I think the potential for even a homoerotic relationship is much higher.
The expectation was that any sexual relationship that may have existed when they were young would be ended at the point in which the boy becomes an adult, but it was expected to continue as a very, very close, tight friendship. And that web of friendships of people who had been mentors and mentees or lovers was part of the glue that kept Spartan society together.
So that any time the Spartan army was in battle, there would be men who had the closest possible relationship with each other of a personal kind, standing next to each other in the battle line. The question of cohesion of units, of small units, is decisive in warfare. Can you imagine anything more cohesive than a unit made up of men of this type?
As a Spartan male grew older, he would be systematically introduced to two new and distinct, yet entirely practical experiences: marriage and cold-blooded murder. Sparta's legacy is that they not only created the idea of military discipline, but that they also perfected it through a social structure and a training program that began at age 7. By 20, most Spartan males graduated from the one system and entered another, one that would remain part of their lives until death. But before they could graduate, Spartan boys were put to one final test. The most promising students were selected to join the Krypteia, a secret security force dedicated to disposing of helots for any reason. Members of the Krypteia lived outside of Sparta, survived by their wits, and used the cover of darkness to cut throats.
The Krypteia could be regarded as a readaptation of a manhood ritual. We know of many societies where, in order to prove that you're ready to be a man, you have to achieve some particularly exceptional feat. But the Spartan version involves killing the enemy within.
The Krypteia then was a way for the Spartans to take their best and the brightest and use them to make life absolute hell for the people on whom the whole Spartan society was based. If you were a particularly handsome helot, if you were a helot who was known for agricultural innovations, if you were a helot who was thought to be in any way exceptional, you had to live in constant fear that the Krypteia would find out about how you stood out and made sure that you got dead.
After their term in the Krypteia, Spartan males joined small regiments of 15 men each. These units were called Suicidia, and they would be the Spartans' home for most of their lives.
So this is just an absolutely key moment. You had to be accepted into a regiment, and really everything you were doing up to that point leads to this moment of acceptance.
Although a Spartan's first duty is to his regiment, each man was also required to get married and produce children. To the outside world, this would seem to be a more pleasant aspect of Spartan life, since the women of Sparta were considered the most beautiful in the world. After all, Helen of Troy was originally a Spartan. But for Spartan men and women who had almost no contact with each other as children, courtship and marriage was just another form of duty to the state that carried with it some of the more strange rituals in Spartan society.
You're really almost dealing with two separate societies, and their courtship rituals seems to reflect this.
Marriages were arranged. There was no wedding ceremony. Instead, the nuptials took the form of a kind of ritualized abduction. The bride's hair was cut short, and she was dressed in a man's cloak. Then, the groom had to sneak into the house after dark in order to consummate the marriage.
That was the beginning of their marriage, their married life. Singularly joyless, I think, ritual, and very significant.
In fact, the only time newly married men were supposed to visit their own homes was after dark, with the sole purpose of impregnating their wives.
This was part of Lycurgus's law, to keep passion alive, and so make it harder for the lovers to get together, make it more of an adventure, you know, skulking away at night to meet in secret, and then as soon as they would consummate their love, the guy had to beat it back to his common mess, so that it was said that it was not uncommon for a Spartan husband never to have seen his wife in daylight until he was 30 years old.
You're talking about a very strange society when you think about these extraordinary checks on normal human impulses that were part of the picture.
The purpose of marriage, according to the city-state, was to produce children, preferably boys.
The only way a Spartan man can get his name on his gravestone is to have died in battle for Sparta. The only way a Spartan woman can get her name on her gravestone is to have died in childbirth.
Reproduction was so crucial, in fact, that Spartans went to extraordinary lengths to make sure